There's a kind of tiredness that sleep doesn't fix. It's not physical. It doesn't come from doing too much. It comes from being, from existing, from being conscious, from having to be here day after day without really knowing why. And nobody talks about this because there are no easy words to name the exhaustion of simply being alive. I invite you to stay here with me, to breathe with what's present in you right now, because what we're going to explore together isn't something that gets solved. It's something that gets recognized, an experience many carry in silence, believing they're alone in it. Stay. There are mornings when you open your eyes and the first thing you feel isn't gratitude or curiosity. It's weight. The weight of having to do it all again. Getting up, getting dressed, moving through the day as if it matters, as if there's some point to the endless repetition of everything. And it's not that your life is terrible. Maybe from the outside, everything looks fine. Maybe you have work, people who love you, a place to live. On paper, everything functions. But inside, there's something that feels too heavy to carry. It's not sadness exactly, not hopelessness, though it resembles it. It's deeper than that. It's the exhaustion of existence itself, of the act of being conscious, of having to inhabit this body, this mind, this life, moment after moment, without rest. And the strange thing is you can't pinpoint when it started. There was no specific moment where everything changed. It was gradual, like something inside you had been dimming so slowly that you only noticed the darkness when it was already complete. You find yourself brushing your teeth one morning, and suddenly you think, I've done this thousands of times. I'll do it thousands more. For what? And that question, once formed, doesn't leave. It stays. It follows you. It colors everything you do with this quiet sense of futility. You start noticing the machinery of life, how each day requires maintenance. Feeding yourself, cleaning yourself, dressing yourself, going places, doing things, interacting with people, making decisions, feeling emotions, processing them, and then sleeping. And tomorrow doing it all again, forever, until you don't. And most people don't think about this. They move through life on autopilot, carried by routine and distraction. But you become acutely aware of the mechanics of existing. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Life starts to feel like a performance you never auditioned for, a role you didn't choose, a script you don't believe in, and you're exhausted from pretending any of it matters. So you go through the motions. You smile at appropriate moments. You respond when spoken to. You show up at work, at obligations, at life. But inside there's nothing, just this quiet, persistent exhaustion, this sense of going through the motions while being completely disconnected from any sense of purpose. And here's what makes it so difficult. You can't really talk about this. If you say, I'm tired of existing, people panic. They think you're suicidal. They want to fix you, save you, hospitalize you. But it's not exactly that. You're not actively wanting to die. You're just exhausted from the effort of staying alive. There's a difference no one seems to understand. So you stay quiet. You function. You do what's expected. But inside you're drowning in the weight of simply being. And no one sees it because you become very good at hiding it. Every interaction requires energy you don't have. Small talk feels impossible. Pretending to care about mundane things feels like climbing a mountain. Someone asks, "How are you?" And you want to scream, "I'm so tired of being a person." But instead you say, "Fine." And the lie costs you something. Another piece of energy you didn't have to give. Responsibilities pile up. Not because they're difficult, but because everything requires effort and you have no effort left. Showering is exhausting. Eating is exhausting. Responding to messages is exhausting. Existing in any visible way is exhausting. And people don't understand. They see someone struggling with basic tasks and they think lazy, unmotivated, irresponsible. They don't see the invisible weight, the constant mental effort just to keep going, the negotiation that happens every moment not to simply shut down completely. There's something that needs to be understood. This isn't weakness. This isn't failure. This is what happens when a person's been holding too much for too long without real rest, without permission to stop performing, without permission to simply be without constantly having to justify their existence. Because that's what the world asks of you, isn't it? To produce, to be available, to function, to be okay. Always, without pause. without real rest. But we're not designed for this. We're not made to be constantly productive, constantly visible, constantly performing as if being alive is something natural and easy. And when you can't stop, when you can't truly rest, the exhaustion deepens. And eventually you're not living anymore. You're just enduring. Stay with me. Every morning is a negotiation. I have to get up. I have to do this again. And then the slow, heavy process of convincing yourself to move, to exist for another day, not because you want to, but because stopping isn't really an option. And you watch this in yourself, this daily struggle just to begin, and you wonder when something as simple as being became this difficult. There are moments when you feel like a spectator in your own life, present but not really there. Everything feels distant, muted, like there's thick glass between you and reality. You can see life happening, but you can't feel it. You can't connect to it. And the effort of trying to reconnect, of trying to care about something, of trying to feel something real, is completely exhausting. Where does this come from? There's not always a clear cause. Sometimes it's an accumulation. Years of disappointment. Years of trying and failing. Years of hoping things would get better and watching them stay the same. Years of being told you matter while feeling completely insignificant in the vastness of everything. Sometimes it comes from small accumulated betrayals, small losses, small moments where you learn that the world is indifferent to your pain, that no one's coming to save you, that you're alone. And being alone is exhausting. Sometimes it comes from seeing too clearly, from understanding how the world works, the injustice, the suffering, the randomness of it all. When you see too clearly how arbitrary and meaningless everything is, it's hard to keep caring. It's hard to keep showing up to a game you know is rigged. And sometimes it simply emerges without apparent reason. Something in your internal chemistry shifts, and suddenly existing feels impossible for reasons you can't explain or control. And here's what makes it particularly isolating. No one really understands unless they felt it. People see someone exhausted and they think they need motivation, inspiration, a push to keep going. But that's not what you need. What you need is permission. Permission to not be okay. Permission to rest without guilt. Permission to exist at a lower capacity without being judged as broken. What you need is someone who can sit with you in the emptiness without trying to fix it, who can say, "I see how tired you are," without immediately offering solutions. Because sometimes being seen is enough. Sometimes knowing you're not alone in the exhaustion makes it slightly more bearable. You've tried before, haven't you? You try to find meaning, purpose, joy, and maybe things improved briefly, but then they got hard again, and again, and again, until trying feels pointless. Until the lesson you've learned is that effort doesn't matter, that hoping hurts more than accepting the emptiness. So you stop trying, not because you're weak, but because trying has proven futile. And existing without trying, without hope, without expectation, is its own special kind of exhaustion. Notice this without judging it. Just notice it. The exhaustion of existing isn't something you fix with willpower. It's not something you overcome by pushing harder. It's something that needs to be acknowledged, held, witnessed. There's something about this state that needs to be named clearly. You're not broken beyond repair. You're a person who's been carrying too much for too long. And yes, life requires effort, but you shouldn't have to white-knuckle your way through every single day. You shouldn't have to perform being okay when you're not. You shouldn't have to constantly justify your existence. You deserve rest, real rest, not just sleep, but permission to stop performing existence for a while. But modern life doesn't allow that. You can't just stop. Bills need paying. Responsibilities need handling. People need things from you. So you keep going, and the exhaustion deepens. And eventually you're not really living. You're just holding on. And no one sees it because you become expert at functioning while empty, at showing up while disappearing, at existing while slowly dying inside. What you need aren't grand changes, not ambitious goals or plans for the future. What you need are small things that feel manageable again. A warm drink, a soft blanket, a moment of sunlight. Not because these things fix anything, but because they make the present moment slightly less heavy. And maybe that's enough for now. Not recovering completely. Not transforming your life. Just making this specific moment a little more bearable. Because the problem with existential exhaustion is it asks you to think about the future, about tomorrow, about next week, about the years ahead. And when simply existing today feels impossible, the future is overwhelming. So maybe don't think about the future. Maybe just think about this moment, this breath, this hour. You can exist for this hour. Not happily, not productively. Just exist. Just be here without having to be anything more. And if you can do that for 1 hour, maybe you can do it for another. Not because you have to, not because you should, just because you can. And that's enough. There's something else that needs to be said. This feeling, permanent as it seems, isn't always permanent. Existential exhaustion can lighten. Meaning can return. Life can feel less heavy. Not through force, not through will, but through time, through real rest, through the slow rebuilding of reasons to stay. But that will come or it won't. And it's okay that you don't know when or if it will happen. For now, the only thing you need to do is this. Allow yourself to be tired. Allow yourself to not be okay. Allow yourself to exist at the absolute minimum and call that enough. Because it is. You're enough, even when you're exhausted, even when you're empty, even when existing feels impossible. You're enough exactly as you are. You don't need to produce to deserve space. You don't need to function perfectly to deserve compassion. You don't need to be okay to deserve rest. You just need to be, and that's it. That's enough. And for everyone else, for people who are close to someone like this, understand that the person who seems always functional might be barely holding on. The exhaustion of existing is invisible until it's not, until someone can't keep pretending anymore. So pay attention. Ask people how they really are. Create space for honest answers. Don't rush to fix or solve. Just witness. Just be present with someone's exhaustion without making them feel worse about it. Because sometimes the most helpful thing you can offer someone who's tired of existing isn't motivation or solutions. It's permission. Permission to rest. Permission to not be okay. Permission to exist at whatever capacity they can manage today without judgment. And maybe with enough rest, enough permission, enough compassion, the weight lightens. Not all at once, not permanently, but enough. Enough to take another breath. Enough to try another day. Enough to keep existing. There's a deep silence at the center of all this. A silence few people come to know. It's the silence of being so tired of being that you don't even have energy left to resist the tiredness. And in that silence, something can happen. Not always, not guaranteed, but sometimes. In that silence, when you stop fighting, when you stop trying to fix yourself, when you simply allow the exhaustion without judging it, something softens. It doesn't disappear. It doesn't resolve. But it softens because maybe the problem was never the tiredness itself. Maybe the problem was the resistance to the tiredness, the fight against it, the judgment about it, the belief that you shouldn't feel this way. And when you release that resistance, when you finally say, okay, I'm tired, I can be tired, something shifts, not in your circumstances, in your relationship to your circumstances. Notice this for a moment. The exhaustion of existing isn't something to conquer. It's not an enemy to defeat. It's an experience that needs space, that needs to be acknowledged, that needs permission to simply be. And when you give it that permission, when you stop fighting against it, the weight doesn't disappear, but it becomes more bearable because you're not carrying the weight and also fighting against carrying it. You're just carrying it, and somehow that's lighter. This isn't surrender in the sense of giving up. It's surrender in the sense of acceptance, of stopping resisting what is, of allowing this moment to be exactly as it is without needing it to be different. And in that acceptance, there's a strange peace, not the peace of having everything resolved, the peace of finally stopping the fight. You've been fighting, haven't you? Fighting to keep going, fighting to care about something, fighting to find meaning, fighting to feel normal when normal feels so far away. And that fight is exhausting, more exhausting than life itself. So maybe just for today, you stop fighting, not forever, not as a permanent decision. Just for now, stop trying to feel different. Stop trying to fix yourself. Stop trying to be who you were before or who you think you should be. Just be who you are in this moment. tired, empty, barely here. And allow yourself to be exactly that without adding a layer of judgment on top of it. Because the judgment is what makes it unbearable, not the tiredness itself, but the story you tell about the tiredness. The story that something's wrong with you, that you should be stronger, that you should be able to handle this better. But what if nothing's wrong? What if you're just tired? What if that's reason enough to rest without having to justify it? What if your existence doesn't need to be productive or meaningful or valuable to deserve to continue? What if simply being here, breathing, existing at the minimum, is enough? Not because someone else says so, because you allow it. This is the subtlest shift and the most profound. Not changing how you feel. Changing how you relate to how you feel. Not fixing the exhaustion. Allowing it. Not overcoming the emptiness. Making space for it. And in that allowing, in that making space, something breathes. Not you consciously breathing, but life breathing through you. Happening without your effort. Continuing without your struggle. Because life doesn't need you to force it. It doesn't need you to understand it. It doesn't need you to agree with it. It just needs you not to resist so strongly that you close off completely. And maybe today that's all you can do. Not resist quite so hard. Allow a little more. Soften just slightly. And that's enough. More than enough. It's everything. If these words touch something in you, if you recognize your own experience in this exploration, I invite you to stay connected. Subscribe to this space where we explore the silent truths few people name. Because your exhaustion doesn't make you less. It makes you human. And your humanity, even in its deepest tiredness, deserves to be witnessed without judgment. Thank you for being here. Thank you for staying. Thank you for simply being, even when being feels too heavy. For now, just breathe. Just be. That's enough. Until our next encounter.